The conference room aboard the Galactic Council's flagship fell silent as Ambassador's words echoed through the chamber. The diplomat's 4 eyes remained fixed on Captain Sarah, the lone human representative sitting at the circular table, surrounded by dozens of alien species. "On their planet, killing is taught at birth," repeated, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of galactic law and order. "This is what our intelligence reports tell us about Earth." Captain shifted slightly in her chair, her face remaining calm despite the hostile gazes from every direction. The other species' representatives whispered among themselves in a symphony of clicks, hums, and electronic translations. She had expected this moment would come eventually, but not so directly, not with such accusation dripping from every word. The Galactic Council had discovered humanity 3 months ago when Earth's first faster-than-light probe had stumbled into their outer territory. What should have been a moment of celebration for humanity's entry into a larger cosmic community had quickly turned into something resembling a trial. High Chancellor, a towering crystalline being from the Eth, raised one of his many appendages for silence. His voice resonated like wind chimes in a storm. "Captain, you stand before this council representing a species that our preliminary studies suggest has built its entire civilization around warfare, violence, and death. Every aspect of your culture, from your entertainment to your education, seems centered on conflict." Sarah stood slowly, her military bearing evident in every movement. She wore her dress uniform not as a show of force, but because it was the only formal attire she possessed that seemed appropriate for such an occasion. The blue fabric with its simple insignia felt inadequate compared to the elaborate robes, bioluminescent displays, and energy fields that adorned the other delegates. "Honored Chancellor," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about my people." A ripple of what could only be described as cosmic laughter passed through the assembly. The representative, resembling a floating jellyfish made of pure light, pulsed in patterns that the universal translator rendered as sardonic amusement. "Misunderstanding," the delegate spoke through harmonized tones. "We have observed your historical records, human. Your species has been at war for over 90% of your recorded history. You have weapons that could destroy your own planet multiple times over. Your children play games that simulate combat. Your stories glorify warriors and battles. Even your sports are often violent competitions where beings strike each other for entertainment." Leaned forward, his elongated neck allowing his head to hover closer to Sarah's position. "We have studied your military academies, your combat training, your martial arts that are passed down from generation to generation. From the moment your offspring can walk, you teach them to fight. This is not the behavior of a civilized species." The weight of their accusations settled heavily in the room. Sarah understood now why no formal diplomatic contact had been made, why she had been summoned alone to this tribunal rather than welcomed as an ambassador of a new member species. They didn't see humanity as potential allies or trading partners. They saw them as a threat that needed to be contained or eliminated. Dr. the Council's chief, a spider-like creature with dozens of tiny eyes, spoke next. "Our analysis shows that human physiology itself is designed for violence. Your forward-facing eyes mark you as predators. Your brain structure shows enlarged areas associated with aggression and territorial behavior. Even your hands are perfectly designed for making weapons and wielding tools of destruction." "Furthermore," added the delegate, whose species resembled walking trees with bark-like skin, "your planet's ecosystem reflects this violent nature. Nearly every species on Earth either preys upon others or has developed defensive mechanisms against predators. This is highly unusual. Most developed worlds have evolved beyond such primitive survival mechanisms." Sarah felt the weight of their judgment, but also something else rising within her. Not anger exactly, but a deep understanding of how fundamentally they had misread her species. She thought of her daughter back on Earth, learning to ride a bicycle while her grandmother cheered from the porch. She thought of the farmers in her who had spent generations coaxing life from difficult soil. She thought of the teachers who stayed late to help struggling students, the doctors who worked through natural disasters, the engineers who built bridges that connected separated communities. "May I tell you a story?" Sarah asked, her question cutting through another wave of whispered consultations among the delegates. High Chancellor's crystalline form shifted, light refracting through his body in patterns that suggested contemplation. "You may speak," though I fail to see how any narrative could alter the facts we have presented." Sarah nodded respectfully. 3 years ago, a massive earthquake struck the Pacific Ring of Fire near my home country. The tsunami that followed devastated coastal communities across several nations. Within hours, before any government could organize relief efforts, ordinary humans began responding. She paused, making eye contact with as many of the delegates as possible. Fishermen who had never ventured far from their home waters sailed directly into dangerous, debris-filled zones to search for survivors. Pilots flew their personal aircraft in weather conditions that violated every safety protocol to deliver medicine to cut-off areas. Construction workers abandoned their paying jobs to spend weeks rebuilding homes for strangers. The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. This proves nothing. Pack species often display altruistic behavior toward their own kind during crisis situations. "But that's just it," Sarah continued. "These weren't their own kind, not in the way you mean. The fishermen were Japanese, the pilots were American, the construction workers were Filipino. Many of them couldn't even communicate directly with the people they were saving. They shared no blood relations, no tribal connections, no economic incentives. They helped because they were human and other humans were suffering." She began to pace slowly around her section of the circle, her movement measured and deliberate. "You say we teach killing at birth, but let me tell you what we actually teach our children." Doctor's numerous eyes tracked Sarah's movement. "Your military traditions speak for themselves." "Our military traditions," Sarah said, "exist because we have learned through terrible experience that the capacity for violence must be understood and controlled if we are to protect what we value most. Yes, we teach our children about conflict. We teach them because ignoring the reality of violence doesn't make it disappear. It only ensures that when violence comes, which it inevitably does in any universe, we are unprepared to face it." The room fell silent again, but this time the quality of the silence had changed. There was less certainty in the delegates' postures, more attention in their listening. "You mentioned our sports," Sarah continued. "In our boxing rings, fighters embrace after trying to defeat each other. In our football stadiums, rival teams share meals together after the game. We compete fiercely, but we do so within rules that both sides agree to follow. The violence is controlled, channeled, given meaning beyond mere destruction." High Chancellor's form brightened slightly. "You speak of controlled violence as though it were a virtue." "Because it is," Sarah replied without hesitation. "Every species in this room has faced threats that required force to overcome. The difference is that most of you developed to the point where those threats were external, from other species or natural disasters. We developed on a world where the primary threats came from our own kind. We had to learn to be warriors and peacemakers simultaneously, or we would have destroyed ourselves long before we reached the stars." She stopped packing and faced the center of the circle directly. "You see our capacity for violence and assume it makes us dangerous to you. But consider this. If we were truly the mindless killers you believe us to be, would we have survived long enough to develop interstellar travel? Would we have built civilizations that last for? Would we create art that celebrates love, sacrifice, and redemption alongside our tales of battle?" The delegates' light patterns shifted to something the translator marked as confusion. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you have observed the tools we've developed but not the wisdom we've gained in learning to use them. Yes, we know how to fight. We know how to kill. We know how to destroy. But more importantly, we know when not to. We know the cost of violence intimately because we have paid it over and over again throughout our history." His four eyes narrowed. "Pretty words, human, but words are not evidence. Your species' history is written in blood." "So is yours," Sarah said quietly, causing a stir throughout the assembly. "Every species here has a violent past. The difference is that most of you have forgotten yours or evolved beyond the need to remember it. We haven't had that luxury." Doctor spoke up, her voice carrying a note of scientific curiosity. "Explain what you mean." Sarah gestured toward the massive viewing port that showed the peaceful star field beyond. "Your species developed on worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. You faced environmental challenges that required you to work together or die. Your evolution selected for collaboration, for harmony, for what you now see as civilization." She turned back to face them. "We developed on a world where cooperation and competition existed side by side, where the same communities that shared resources during harsh winters also competed for territory during abundant seasons, where the skills needed to protect your family were identical to the skills needed to threaten your neighbors. We learned that strength and compassion aren't opposites. They're partners. The chamber remained silent as the delegates processed her words. Sarah could see the uncertainty in their postures, the way even their most confident representatives seemed to be reconsidering their initial assessments. The earthquake response I described earlier, she continued, happened because humans understand suffering. We know what it means to lose everything. We know what it means to face death. And because we know these things intimately, we also know the value of reaching out a hand to help someone else avoid that fate. High Chancellor's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign that other species had learned to interpret as deep contemplation. You claim that your capacity for violence is what gives you the capacity for compassion. This seems counterintuitive. Is it? Sarah asked. Can any of you tell me what it truly means to choose peace if you've never had to choose anything else? Can you value life if you've never truly understood death? We don't fight because we love violence. We fight because we love what violence threatens to destroy. The silence that followed was different from the hostile quiet that had greeted her arrival. This was the silence of beings who were being forced to reconsider fundamental assumptions about the nature of civilization itself. Was the first to break it. If what you say is true, then why should we trust your species with the knowledge and technology of the Galactic Council? Why should we risk introducing a warrior race into our peaceful federation? Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It wasn't a triumphant expression, but something sadder and more complex. Because, Ambassador, your peaceful federation is about to face a threat that peace alone cannot overcome. And when that day comes, you're going to need allies who understand that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to be willing to fight for it. The effect of her words was immediate and electric. Delegates leaned forward, translated voices rose in pitch, and the careful diplomatic composure that had characterized the meeting dissolved into urgent whispers and rapid gesticulation. High Chancellor's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. What do you know of threats to the Council? Sarah's expression grew grave. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something moving in the void between galaxies, something large, something that consumes entire solar systems as it travels. It will reach Council space within 5 years. The chamber erupted into chaos, but Sarah remained standing calmly at the center of it all, her eyes meeting each delegate's gaze in turn. She had delivered the first piece of information that would change everything, and she could see the exact moment when each species representative realized that their assumptions about humanity might not just be wrong, but dangerously naive. The trial had become something else entirely. It had become humanity's first real diplomatic negotiation with the galaxy, and the stakes were higher than anyone in the room had imagined. The emergency session convened 18 hours after Sarah's revelation, in a different chamber designed for crisis management rather than formal proceedings. The circular diplomatic table had been replaced by a holographic command center that projected three-dimensional star charts and tactical displays. Every major species in the Galactic Council had sent their military advisors alongside their diplomats. Captain stood beside Admiral, who had arrived on the fastest ship humanity could deploy. Was older, grayer, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades making life-or-death decisions in the depths of space. His presence seemed to validate Sarah's warnings in a way that words alone could not. High Chancellor materialized at the center of the holographic display, his crystalline form reflecting the ominous red markers that indicated the approaching threat. Captain, Admiral, present your evidence. Admiral stepped forward, activating a data pad that interfaced with the Council's systems. 3 months ago, our deep space array detected gravitational anomalies in the void between the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. Initially, we assumed they were natural phenomena, black holes, perhaps, or dark matter concentrations. The holographic display shifted, showing a vast expanse of seemingly empty space. Then, slowly, a pattern emerged. Points of light were disappearing in a steady progression, like stars being snuffed out one by one. We began tracking the pattern, continued. The disappearances weren't random. They followed a clear trajectory, moving at approximately 12% of light speed toward our galaxy. More troubling, the rate of consumption has been accelerating. Doctor's numerous eyes focused intently on the display. Consumption? You believe something is destroying these star systems? Not destroying, Sarah interjected. Harvesting. Our analysis suggests that whatever this entity is, it's extracting energy and matter from entire solar systems before moving on. The stars aren't exploding or collapsing naturally. They're being systematically drained. Who had been silent since the previous day's revelations, finally spoke. This is impossible. No known species possesses such capabilities. The energy requirements alone would be beyond anything we've ever encountered, Admiral agreed. Which is why we need to take this seriously. Our projections show the entity will reach the outer territories of Council space in approximately 4 years and 8 months. Based on its current consumption rate, it will have grown significantly more powerful by then. The delegate, whose tree-like appearance seemed particularly appropriate in the forest of holographic data surrounding them, raised a bark-covered appendage. Even if we accept your analysis, what do you propose we do? Our species have lived in peace for over 1,000 cycles. We have exploration fleets, research vessels, and defensive installations. We do not have military forces capable of confronting a threat of this magnitude. That's exactly the problem, Admiral said bluntly. You've created a civilization that's magnificent at preserving peace, but has no capability to defend it when peace isn't an option. The representative's light patterns flickered in agitation. Are you suggesting we should have maintained military forces, that we should have continued the primitive practices of warfare even after achieving enlightenment? Sarah exchanged a glance with Admiral before responding. We're suggesting that enlightenment includes understanding when violence is necessary to protect innocence. You've built something beautiful here. A federation of species working together, sharing knowledge, creating art and science that benefits everyone. But beauty doesn't defend itself. High Chancellor's form brightened as he accessed vast databases of Council history. Our records show that military conflicts ended among member species over 800 years ago. We have had no need for weapons of war since that time. And in 800 years, have you faced any external threats? Admiral asked. The silence that followed was answer enough. Doctor broke the quiet with a question that cut to the heart of the matter. What capabilities does humanity possess that we lack? Admiral gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show Earth's defensive capabilities. Every human colony maintains a militia. Every civilian ship can be converted to military purposes within days. Our children learn tactical thinking through games and sports. Our scientists study weapons development alongside peaceful applications. Our entire industrial base can shift to military production if necessary. Because, Sarah added, we learned that the choice isn't between being peaceful and being militaristic. The choice is between being prepared and being victims. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the human military assets displayed in the hologram. Your fleets are smaller than our exploration divisions. Your weapons technology appears primitive compared to our industrial capabilities. What makes you believe you can succeed where we cannot? Experience, Admiral said simply. We've fought wars in space. We understand tactics, logistics, and most importantly, we understand sacrifice. Your ships are designed to explore and discover. Ours are designed to survive when someone is trying to kill us. The ambassador leaned forward. Explain the difference. Sarah activated another display, showing comparative ship designs. Your vessels are magnificent. They're fast, efficient, and capable of incredible scientific achievements. But look at the hull configurations, the power distribution systems, the crew compartments. Everything is optimized for maximum efficiency and minimum redundancy. She highlighted specific sections of a typical Council ship. One hit to your primary power core disables the entire vessel. Your crew quarters are spacious and comfortable, but they're not protected against decompression or radiation. Your communication systems are powerful but not hardened against electromagnetic interference. The display shifted to show human military vessels. Our ships are slower, less comfortable, and less efficient, but every critical system has multiple backups. Every compartment can be sealed independently. Our crews train constantly for damage control, emergency repairs, and combat in compromised conditions. Admiral stepped closer to the Council delegates. The entity approaching us has consumed hundreds of star systems. It's not going to be deterred by diplomatic protests or scientific analysis. When it arrives, it will try to harvest your worlds just like all the others. The question is, will you be ready to fight back? The delegates' bark-like skin rustled in what their species used to express deep concern. You speak of fighting something that devours stars. How do you propose to battle an entity of such power? By understanding it, Sarah replied. Our initial analysis suggests this isn't a single massive creature or ship. It's more likely a swarm intelligence, possibly mechanical in nature. Millions or billions of smaller units working together to break down matter and energy for easier consumption. She manipulated the holographic display to show a theoretical model. If that's correct, then it has weaknesses. Swarm intelligences depend on communication and coordination. Disrupt that, and you can turn their greatest strength into a vulnerability. Doctor's scientific curiosity was clearly engaged, despite her fear. How would you disrupt communication across an entity that spans light years? The same way we've learned to fight our own wars, Admiral answered. You identify the command and control nodes, you develop weapons specifically designed to counter their advantages, and you accept that victory requires sacrifice. High Chancellor processed this information, his crystalline form cycling through different patterns of light. You are asking us to transform our entire civilization, to abandon centuries of peaceful development and return to the primitive state of militaristic competition. No, Sarah said firmly. We're asking you to add another tool to your civilization's toolkit. Keep everything you've built. Keep your art, your science, your philosophy, your cooperation, but also develop the capability to defend it all. She gestured toward the holographic display showing the approaching threat. This entity doesn't care about your achievements. It doesn't value your art or your discoveries. To it, you're just another collection of resources to be consumed. You can meet it with songs and poetry and scientific theories, but it's going to respond with the systematic destruction of everything you've created. The delegate's light patterns shifted to something the translator marked as profound sadness. If we develop military capabilities, if we create weapons and train soldiers, how do we ensure we don't become the very thing we seek to defend against? How do we maintain our peaceful nature while preparing for war? Admiral smiled grimly. That's the question every ethical military force has to answer. The trick is remembering that the weapons serve the values, not the other way around. You don't become warriors because you love fighting. You become warriors because you love what fighting protects. Had been studying the tactical displays intently. Assuming we accept your proposal, what do you suggest? We have less than 5 years to develop capabilities that took your species to perfect. We don't start from scratch, Sarah replied. We start with what you already have and adapt it. Your industrial technology is centuries ahead of ours. Your scientific knowledge is vast. Your cooperation and communication abilities are unmatched. What you need is tactical doctrine, weapons design, and combat training. Admiral nodded. Humanity volunteers to provide military advisors, training programs, and tactical consultation. In exchange, we need access to your advanced manufacturing capabilities, your scientific research networks, and your faster-than-light communication systems. A partnership, High Chancellor observed. Your species provides warrior knowledge, our species provide the infrastructure to implement it. More than that, Sarah said. A fusion. We don't just want to teach you how to fight. We want to learn from your peaceful traditions, your diplomatic skills, your ability to maintain cooperation across vast distances and cultural differences. The combination of human tactical thinking with council resources and coordination could create something neither of us could achieve alone. Doctor spoke quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. If we do this, if we militarize our society, will we still be the same civilization that built this federation? Sarah considered the question carefully before responding. You'll be the civilization that chose to defend itself rather than surrender. You'll be the species that valued peace enough to fight for it. That's not a betrayal of your principles. That's the ultimate expression of them. The chamber fell silent as each delegate contemplated the magnitude of the decision before them. They were being asked to transform not just their military capabilities, but their fundamental understanding of what civilization meant. Was the first to speak. If we proceed with this alliance, what guarantees do we have that humanity won't use this military cooperation to dominate or conquer council worlds after the threat is eliminated? Admiral's expression grew serious. None. You have no guarantees except our word and our history. But consider this. If we were expansionist conquerors, would we be warning you about an external threat? Would we be offering to share our military knowledge instead of keeping it secret until we could use it against you? Besides, Sarah added with a slight smile, Once this crisis is over, you'll have learned everything we can teach you about warfare. If we tried to betray the Alliance after that, we'd be facing an enemy that knew all our tactics but possessed superior technology and resources. From a purely selfish perspective, our best strategy is to remain loyal allies. High Chancellor's crystalline form began to pulse in a pattern that other delegates recognized as deep contemplation. After several minutes of silence, he spoke. The Council will vote on this proposal within one standard day cycle. In the meantime, Admiral Captain, you will work with our military advisors to develop preliminary plans for this unprecedented cooperation. As the formal session ended and delegates began to file out, Doctor approached Sarah. Captain, may I ask you something personal? Sarah nodded, of course. Do you truly believe we can succeed against this threat? Or are you simply choosing the most honorable way to face extinction? Sarah looked out through the chamber's viewing port at the peaceful star field beyond, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness, an entity of unimaginable power was approaching with the intent to consume everything she could see. Doctor, she said quietly, I believe that the choice to fight, even against impossible odds, is what makes us worthy of survival. Whether we win or lose is less important than whether we face our fate on our feet or on our knees. The alien scientist considered this for a long moment. Your species has a saying, I believe, death before dishonor. We have that saying, Sarah confirmed, but we have another one that I think is more appropriate for this situation. The best defense is a good offense. We're not planning to die heroically, we're planning to win. As Doctor departed, Sarah remained in the chamber, staring out at the stars and thinking about the irony of the situation. Humanity had been brought before the Galactic Council as a potential threat to galactic peace. Now they were being asked to serve as the galaxy's defenders against an even greater threat. The trial had become an alliance, and the universe was about to discover what happened when human tactical thinking was combined with galactic resources and the desperate motivation to protect everything worth protecting. 4 years later, the joint fleet assembled at the edge of Council space bore little resemblance to the peaceful exploration vessels that had once represented galactic civilization. The ships retained their elegant designs, but those designs now incorporated human tactical thinking, reinforced hulls, redundant systems, and weapons that merged Council technology with human military doctrine. Admiral Sarah, now wearing the insignia of Supreme Fleet Commander, stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, a vessel that represented everything the Alliance had accomplished. Built with organic hull technology, powered by energy matrices, equipped with computing systems, and armed with weapons that combined human targeting doctrine with Council manufacturing precision, the Unity was both a symbol and a weapon. Beside her, High Chancellor had taken the unprecedented step of joining the fleet personally, his crystalline form now interfaced directly with the ship's command systems. Around them, officers from dozens of species worked together with a coordination that would have seemed impossible during that first hostile tribunal. Fleet status report, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying across the bridge and to the 3,000 ships positioned throughout the system. Commander, the tactical officer whose species had once accused humanity of being inherently violent, spoke with calm precision. All vessels report ready. The barrier field is fully deployed. Weapon systems are charged and targeting solutions are calculated. Through the main viewing screen, they could see it approaching. The Devourer, as it had come to be known, was exactly what human analysis had predicted. Not a single massive entity, but a swarm of billions of mechanical units that moved together like a vast, predatory organism. From this distance, it looked like a storm cloud of metal and energy, stretching across several light years and leaving nothing but empty space in its wake. Doctor, now serving as the fleet's chief science officer, manipulated her control interface with precise movements of her numerous appendages. Confirmed composition matches our models. Estimated 15 billion individual units, ranging in size from fighter craft to dreadnought-class vessels. Central coordination nodes identified. Sarah nodded grimly. The past 4 years had been the most intense period of cooperation in galactic history. Human military advisors had worked around the clock with Council scientists and engineers, developing new technologies and tactics while training mixed-species crews in combat procedures. The process had transformed both civilizations. The Council had learned to think tactically, to plan for conflict, and to accept that sometimes violence was the only solution to a problem. They had built weapons, trained soldiers, and developed the capacity to wage war on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had ever attempted. Humanity, in turn, had learned the value of true cooperation, of combining different species' strengths into something greater than the sum of its parts. They had discovered that their warrior culture was enhanced, not diminished, by working with beings who brought different perspectives to the art of defense. "Incoming transmission from the Devourer swarm," reported Commander, or the communications officer whose bark-like skin now bore the scars of combat training exercises. "On screen," Sarah ordered. The image that appeared was not what anyone had expected. Instead of a monstrous alien intelligence or cold mechanical construct, they saw something that looked almost human. The figure was tall, pale, and elegant, with features that suggested ancient nobility. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. "Greetings, defenders of this spiral arm. I am the shepherd of the harvest. Your resistance is both admirable and futile. We have consumed galaxies older and more advanced than yours. Submit now, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will ensure that your civilizations suffer before they end." High Chancellor's crystalline form brightened as he responded. "We are the Galactic Council, and we reject your ultimatum. These worlds are under our protection, and we will defend them with everything we possess." The shepherd's expression didn't change, but something in its eyes suggested amusement. "Protection, defense, such concepts assume you have something capable of threatening us. You do not understand what you face." Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting across the communication channel. "We understand perfectly. You're parasites. You consume other civilizations because you've forgotten how to create anything yourself. You're powerful, but you're not warriors. You're scavengers." For the first time, the shepherd's composed expression flickered. "Humans, yes, we have encountered your species' transmissions, primitive savages who glorify violence and conflict. You will be particularly satisfying to harvest." "Try us," Sarah said simply, and cut the transmission. The Devourer swarm began to accelerate toward their defensive positions, its leading edge reaching nearly 20% of light speed. The sight was terrifying and magnificent simultaneously, like watching a metal hurricane approach across the cosmos. "All ships, this is Admiral," Sarah broadcast to the entire fleet. 4 years ago, many of you saw humanity as a threat to galactic peace. Today, we stand together as the only thing standing between the Devourer and every world we've sworn to protect. We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Now we show the universe what happens when peace learns to fight." The barrier field activated first, a massive network of energy projectors that created a wall of destructive force stretching across multiple star systems. It was Council technology enhanced with human tactical doctrine, designed not to stop the Devourer completely, but to disrupt its formation and separate the swarm into manageable segments. The leading edge of the swarm hit the barrier and exploded into brilliant light. Thousands of Devourer units were destroyed instantly, but thousands more pushed through, their formations broken but their numbers still overwhelming. "Phase 2 initiate," Sarah commanded. The fleet opened fire with weapons that represented the marriage of two very different philosophies of war. Council energy systems provided power levels that human weapons designers had never dreamed possible, while human targeting doctrine ensured that every shot was placed with maximum tactical effect. The space between the fleets became a light show of destruction as energy beams, missile swarms, and exotic particle weapons filled the void. The Devourer units returned fire with weapons that could crack planets, but they discovered something they hadn't encountered before, an enemy that had been designed specifically to survive their attacks. "Damage report," Sarah called out as the Unity shook under the impact of Devourer fire. "Hull integrity at 91%, Al reported. Backup systems engaged, all weapons operational." The human doctrine of multiple redundancies, combined with Council advanced materials, was proving its worth. Ships that should have been destroyed by single hits were staying in the fight, continuing to pour fire into the enemy formation. Doctor looked up from her science station, her numerous eyes bright with excitement. "Admiral, the coordination disruption is working. The swarm units are having difficulty maintaining formation coherence. Their tactical efficiency is dropping significantly." Sarah smiled grimly. It was working exactly as planned. The Devourer's greatest strength was its coordination, its ability to act as a single massive organism. But that coordination depended on constant communication between billions of units. Human electronic warfare specialists, working with Council communication technology, had developed jamming systems that could disrupt those signals without affecting their own fleet's coordination. All ships advance to Phase 3 positions, Sarah ordered. Time to show them what happens when hunters become the hunted. The fleet began to move in patterns that would have been impossible without the past 4 years of intensive training. Ships from dozens of different species maneuvered in perfect coordination, using tactics that combined human pack hunting instincts with Council precision and efficiency. The Devourer swarm, suddenly finding itself confused and disorganized, began to react defensively rather than aggressively. Units that had been advancing in perfect formation started to cluster together, prioritizing survival over tactical advantage. Now, Sarah commanded. The secret weapon activated. Hidden among the fleet were ships that looked like standard Council vessels, but were actually massive kinetic bombardment platforms. Using human railgun technology scaled up with Council power systems, they fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed directly into the clustering Devourer formations. The effect was devastating. Each projectile carried enough kinetic energy to vaporize entire sections of the swarm, and the Devourer unit's defensive clustering only made them easier targets. High Chancellor's voice resonated with something that might have been satisfaction. "Commander, your species' tactical innovations continue to exceed our expectations." "We're not done yet," Sarah replied. "Al, signal the Council reserves, time for the final phase." From jump points throughout the system, fresh fleets began to emerge. These weren't the mixed human Council ships that had been fighting for the past several hours. These were pure Council vessels, but Council vessels with a difference. They had been built in secret over the past year, incorporating everything learned from the partnership with humanity. The Shepherd of the Harvest appeared on their communications channel again, but its composed demeanor was gone. "This is impossible. Our intelligence indicated that your species lacked military capabilities. You should not possess such tactical sophistication." Sarah's smile was predatory. "That's the thing about learning from warriors, Shepherd. We don't just teach you how to fight. We teach you how to think like fighters. And fighters understand that the best victories are the ones your enemy never sees coming." The fresh Council fleets weren't using conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed systems that attacked the fundamental physics keeping the Devourer swarm operational. Gravity weapons that created localized space-time distortions. Quantum scramblers that disrupted the electromagnetic fields binding the mechanical units together. Reality anchors that prevented the swarm from using whatever exotic physics allowed it to move faster than light. Doctor's voice carried a note of scientific amazement. "Admiral, the swarm is beginning to collapse. The individual units are losing cohesion. Whatever force was binding them together as a collective intelligence is failing." The Shepherd's image flickered and distorted as the communication itself began to break down. "You do not understand what you have done." "We understand perfectly," Sarah replied. "We've killed a galaxy-eating parasite, we've protected our homes, and we've proven that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be willing to wage war." The transmission cut out as the last of the Devourer's central coordination nodes were destroyed. Across the battlefield, billions of mechanical units simply stopped functioning, their purpose and direction lost without the collective intelligence that had driven them. In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and the enormity of their victory began to sink in, Sarah found herself standing beside High Chancellor on the observation deck of the Unity. "Commander," said quietly, "I believe I owe your species an apology. When we first encountered humanity, we saw only your capacity for violence. We failed to understand that this capacity was paired with wisdom about when and how to use it." Sarah shook her head. "No apology needed, Chancellor. You saw what we showed you. Our mistake was thinking that our military traditions were something to be ashamed of instead of something to be proud of. This partnership taught us both something important." "Which is?" Sarah gestured toward the debris field that had once been an unstoppable force of galactic destruction. "That strength and compassion aren't opposites. That the capacity to destroy can be the foundation for the determination to protect. That warriors and peacemakers aren't different types of people. They're the same people, choosing which role the situation requires. High Chancellor's crystalline form pulsed with patterns that other species had learned to recognize as deep contentment. And what happens now? The threat is eliminated. Our species have learned to wage war. How do we ensure we remember how to wage peace? Sarah smiled as she watched the mixed crews throughout the fleet working together to rescue survivors from damaged ships, council and human personnel treating each other's wounded without regard for species or origin. The same way we always have, Chancellor, by remembering that everything we learned about fighting was in service of protecting what we love. The warriors go home to their families. The weapons are maintained but not used, and we remain ready because peace is not the absence of the capacity for war. Peace is the choice not to use that capacity unless there's no alternative. As the joint fleet began the long journey home, carrying with them the proof that cooperation could triumph over any threat, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had begun with a trial, with accusations that humanity was too violent to join galactic civilization. It had ended with the recognition that humanity's understanding of violence, properly channeled and wisely applied, was exactly what galactic civilization needed to survive. The galaxy was safe, not because its defenders had chosen peace over war, but because they had learned to choose both peace and war at the appropriate times. They had become warriors in service of peace, and that combination had saved everything they held dear. On their planet, killing was indeed taught at birth. But more importantly, so were the reasons worth killing for and the even better reasons for choosing not to kill. In the end, that balance had made all the difference.